Thank you very much, Mr. Dominguez. So this is the second part of Athena's visit and making ready for the journey. This is preparation for post-secondary opportunities, and we'll have a look at that. And as always, don't forget that whatever we do here is going to be good for head, good for heart, and good for hands. And in the intersection of all of those, what we see is high performance. And a lot of times we refer to high performance as academic, but also we look at it in terms of service to others, developing a lifelong love of learning and cultivating essential skills. So whether you go to a gap year or whether you go to a community college, a state university, you go to Harvard, you come to us, we want you to be a lifelong lover of learning. Now, I see that there is a square that keeps appearing, so I'm going to stop sharing just momentarily and start sharing again here. Let's move forward. Now, behind me, as is typical for these sessions, is a college. This is a different college than before. We have had Oxford in the past. We have had the University of Chicago in the past. And what I would like to do is to ask the assembled crowd here, what is behind me? What is this institution? What makes it a little bit more difficult? This is a sketch. And it is not a picture. And this is a sketch from many, many years ago, but I will tell you, you are likely to guess it if you know anything about me. So I'm going to give you a little bit better of a look of what that is. And you can please put your guesses in the chat. And if you guess it correctly, first person to guess correctly will win a fine prize from UC San Diego. And I will tell you that that building behind me is not UC San Diego. So if you're guessing that way, please don't. So at any rate, on with the journey. Now, the last time we came together, we talked about different colleges and universities, and one of our phenomenal parent scholars asked whether there was a list of different institutions. And what I've done here, and we'll make sure that this gets out to you, this is an aggregated list of different types of institutions. So what you see here at the top, these are national universities that are ranked, and it will give you all of the information that you want, how many people are in attendance, what's the rank, what's the cost, not only for tuition, but for room and board. For those of you who are more focused on the California State University system, I have also provided a link to a listing of the California State University campuses. You can pick geographically. You will find a map of the state, and wherever you want to go, just click the little dot and it will expand and give you all of the information that you need. Those of you who may be interested in pursuing opportunities at our 2-year and sometimes 4-year colleges, the California community colleges, I've included a link to a listing of all of the California community colleges with enrollment statistics. So if you are looking for perhaps a smaller community college, you can find it there. Some of you may be interested in West Point or Annapolis or the Coast Guard Academy, the Air Force Academy, and the Maritime Academies, which are not thought of as often, but very valuable for the merchant marine. You can find that list at todaysmilitary.com. Just click the link and you will be there. Those of you who are interested in private colleges and universities, and not just the ones we typically think of, not just USC and Harvard and Yale and Princeton, but private universities and colleges across the country, there is a link to them there. And then finally, some of you may be interested in having your kids study abroad. So if you're going to University of Durham, University of Sussex, the Sorbonne, it is all there, top universities globally and ranked. And I was very pleased to see that UC San Diego and my alma mater, UC Irvine, were also ranked globally. So that was a bit of a cheer. We'll make sure to get you those links, but if you have questions once you linked into a college, want to know more about it, of course, just let me know. Um, Mahatma Gandhi, and we know Gandhi for many things, but one of the things he said is that every home is a university and the parents are the teachers. So never forget your important role as an educator, because a child's very first teacher is you. Now, the last time we talked, um, there are a number of you who are worried about motivation, and not just sort of understanding the mechanics of motivation, not just the cognitive and socio-emotional elements of motivation, but what to do. And oftentimes we know how the teenage brain works, and we understand that it is likely to seem as though your tween or teen has no interests at all. And you'll say, well, what are you passionate about? And they'll go, I don't know, stuff. And they always seem to just be sort of watching TV or playing video games, and you may not have a good idea about what they're interested in. And finding out what their interests are certainly helps you create a forward pathway, a forward course, whether it means going into a gap year experience or an on-the-job training or certificate program or a college. You always want to be able to support one's passion. So what do you do if your kid says, I'm not interested in anything, or you suspect that your kid is showing that they don't have interest? Well, be aware everyone has interests. And just like teachers, just like we expect of educators, you need to be a good listener and observer first and foremost. Your role as a parent is, especially during these years, is about 30% detective. So you're always sort of on the watch, getting clues about what people might be interested in. Now, a lot of what you might see as lack of motivation actually relates to a non-expressed lack of confidence, sort of a fear to take on new things. We know from our look at the brain for adolescents and adolescent behavior, we know this is a very insecure time of their lives. So a lot of times they are interested in something or passionate about something, but are afraid that they can't do it. And what we know about the neuroscience of persistence is that once we feel competent and once we feel successful, our brain rewards us and encourages us to move forward. So one of the things that you can do, even in the smallest way possible, is make sure that your kids see themselves as capable, confident, and successful. And you can actually provide venues for them to do that. So looking actively for motivational opportunity. And we want to do this at the intersection of education and interests. So if your kid looks like they are interested in video games and they're playing video games, maybe they would be interested in building video games. And we at UC San Diego have a plenitude of different types of opportunities for tweens and for teens and even for younger kids where they can experience success with something they are passionate about. So if you get the feeling that arts might be the direction in which they want to go, we have programming for elementary kids, we have programming for middle school kids and high school kids in the arts, and also in holistic learning opportunities like STEAM and STREAM and others. So always try to find motivational opportunities and make sure that kids are availed opportunities for success. Now, I can tell you, when we're talking about motivational opportunities and the talk, the motivational talk is, you got to find something that you like to do. And why are you having trouble? Aren't you, good at things? That probably didn't work with you. I can tell you quite certainly it did not work with me. The way that we pursue motivation and encourage is by engaging the journey. And remember, these sessions are all about a journey. The metaphor that we use is the journey of Odysseus through challenges and opportunities, and new lands and all sorts of things like that. So one of the things that you can do is engage in the journey of discovery with them and make good use of the word yet. When your child comes to you and say, well, I'm not good at, or I don't know how to do, always end that sentence with the word yet, because it encourages them to move forward. So instead of the big talk, undertake small actions and make sure that you are using the word yet. Now, we know that all of this really has to do with neuroscience. Everything that we've talked about from our very first session to the current session is all about neuroscience. And we know that at this age, the part of the brain that produces emotions and the part of the brain that encourages risk-taking is growing rapidly. So you will find at this age that tweens and teens have manifold interests, even though they may not be telling you about them. They also have phenomenal learning aptitudes at this age. So adolescence is a great age, and this is also a time when they are eager to take risks. At the same time, these kids who are learning new stuff and really absorbing it, and they're sort of pruning out the old stuff, and they're eager to take risks. They're also consumed with self-doubt. Remember from our workshop on adolescence behavior, they have trouble getting organized. So if you are able to provide that sort of support and to build resilience and to make sure you acknowledge their successes, it really goes a long way. Remember, everything goes back to the neuroscience of persistence and the neuroscience of avoidance. Encouragement and support in the wake of failure. It's very important that kids learn to fail and learn to celebrate failure and learn to dust themselves up and get themselves up again. So working with children to create a growth mindset, we talked a little bit about what we meant by growth mindset, and really helping them to see things realistically, because we know at this age, we're not seeing things realistically. Instead, you know, the production of the neurochemistry in the limbic system makes things seem a bit distorted and out of whack. And what we also want to be able to do is highlight the positive. No matter how small that positive is, make sure that you do highlight it. Now, taking a page out of the teacher's book, and this doesn't mean literally ripping up textbooks a la Dead Poets Society, but what it means is that the teachers with whom your kids work know how to appeal to a variety of interests and ways of learning, multi-sensory teaching that is appropriate to age. So again, think about how you can engage your kids in a variety of different interests, whether it is in professions or whether it is in post-secondary education. It's really banking upon your role as a child's first teacher and this idea of home as university. And of course, those of us who are at the university are here to help in any way that we can. We want to work on a strengths-based approach. Now, the way we know how we learn is we build upon where somebody is, and we scaffold upward. And what we want to be able to do then is to have you work with your kids to cultivate their interests based on their strengths. And we know that motivation, again, is linked to the idea that we are good at something. And at this age, kids want to feel as though they are good at something versus seeing themselves as mediocre. And of course, at this age, that tends to happen quite a bit. Let It Go. And that was an epic song from the movie Frozen. But what we're talking about here is not necessarily letting something pass, but the primary complaint that we hear from teens and tweens, not just in high school, but all over educational institutions, even at the universities, is a lack of voice in making decisions about education. When you are able, offer them choice, offer opportunities to engage their interests independently. Let go of something, let them get in the driver's seat. Now, when we talk about the driver's seat, I mean the metaphorical driver's seat, of course, unless they are 16 and licensed, and then that's up to you. Now, there are times where perceived disinterest and lack of motivation, unmotivated, might be something symptomatic of a deeper issue. So there are certainly occasions where you will find kids who are unmotivated because they may be experiencing depression. So anhedonia, for example, the lack of interest or pleasure in response to pleasant experiences, that could be a symptom. So keep an eye on that. But usually, just by a little bit of good detective work, you should be able to suss out those things that your kids are interested in. And when you do, go on the journey together with them. We have programs at the University of California, San Diego, and these are programs for which we can provide fellowships to our stunning Sweetwater Union High School District scholars, where parents and teens can go through together, each earn credit, each earn a certificate in technology and life sciences and entrepreneurship, where you can actually not only help light the road ahead, but go on the journey with your kids, which is absolutely a great way to do this. So now, how do we make these decisions? We've talked a lot about cognitive readiness, the sort of the intellectual readiness. We've talked about socio-emotional readiness. We've talked about some of the metacognitive elements that are important, those sound habits of mind, creative thinking, critical thinking, communication, the ability to work individually, as a foundation upon which to build. And we talked a lot about the different types of opportunities that are out there. There are infinite possibilities, infinite opportunities out there. So how do you make the decision whether you are going right into the workforce, or whether you're taking a gap year, or whether you are going to school? And what we have found that it is never too early or too late. It all has to do with the way that our children understand themselves, how we understand our children, and how we can match interests to self-knowledge and move ahead from that. And it's an ongoing process. Now, back when my grandfather was still working, the idea was that you would find a company, you would work for 25 years, and you would get a gold watch when you retired, and you would work at the same place for all of your career. These days, that is absolutely a very different experience than we might be used to. And we know that the gig economy, for example, is thriving. So it is never too late. It's never too late to make a change. It is never too late to pursue opportunities. It is never too late to pursue education. But remember, the last session we had, we talked about identity formation, and we talked about motivation. And we know that kids at this age are really in a formative stage insofar as their interests are concerned. So the more that we can immerse them or expose them to professional experiences, so much the better. And what you see here is sort of a series of steps to take, where we have our kids analyze themselves, look more deeply into themselves in terms of their interests, their skills. What are their personal values? What are their personality? There are certainly, tests and batteries that you can take for this, but it's really all about knowing yourself first and being very honest about that. And then looking at what lies in front of you. So for example, if you want to do programming for Google or programming for Facebook, do you need a degree? What are the requirements? So doing some research, understanding the world of work, and not just what is a company like and how much do they pay and what are the benefits, but really understanding what one needs to get in there, understanding what the culture is. We know the advent of tech companies with these sort of lavish campuses that are very employee-centric are things that people tend to glom onto. And what are the industry trends? Where do things look like they are going? Is this a job that is still going to exist 20 years from now? And we are very fond of saying in education that we are preparing our children and our young adults for jobs that do not yet exist. In my day, you wouldn't even envision that there were jobs in cyberspace. Cyberspace didn't exist. Outer space existed, so you could go work for NASA. So the idea is to really know yourself and know what's out there. And then from that point, you can start getting focused. You can start setting goals. You can start making decisions and planning actions. Now, kids can't do this really on their own. I'm sure most of them are very independent, but they are going to look to you for support. Again, remember, kids at this age are looking outwardly for support, and they're looking outwardly for approval and outwardly for counsel, even if they don't seem like they are doing that with you. And then following, finding a focus is then to take some kind of action, to gain experience. Are there internships available? So for our programming for high school, we offer internships. We have an internship program where you're supported by the university as you go through an internship. So you can really gain firsthand experience. All of our courses for kids and young adults are focused on giving them very practical experience and understanding what a given profession is like. So then there is the job search or, looking for a major. But the idea behind things here is I think we have very stereotypical visions of what professions are like. So if you have kids, for example, who are interested in healthcare, but don't like biology or don't want to go to medical school or don't want to be doctors, are there other things that they can do within the healthcare system? And believe you me, there are a manifold different positions in healthcare, whether you are an accountant or you are in marketing or you are creative or you are an administrator. There's a lot out there. So it really comes first with knowing oneself. Now, again, our futures are always going to be in a state of flux. A few sessions ago, I talked about my own experience in heading towards post-secondary education, where I was sort of wandering down a path, getting pulled in one direction and then getting pulled in the other. And really, our hearts and minds really direct this. So, we may have an established pathway, but we may be called out by something here. So if we look at this approach, we can look at, again, not only knowing what your interests are, but understanding your value, understanding your options, making plans, and creating your own future. The working world is a lot different than it was in my day, and we are experiencing a period of time where it is really a seller's market in terms of employment. So again, another way of looking at it. So let's take an example of making a good decision. Many of you have heard the term gap year or taking a gap year. And when I was finishing up high school, taking a gap year basically meant, I don't know what to do. I'm just going to take a year off, and that we'll call that a gap year. But more recently, gap years have really been focused on experiential learning. So really not only getting to know oneself, but really getting to know what one is passionate about and what is out there. These gap years can take on a variety of forms. Some of them are very highly structured. There are organized gap year programs, and I can refer you to an association that sort of serves as an accreditor of gap year programs. So if you are talking to your son or daughter and they're saying, well, I'm not really sure what I want to do, maybe I'll take a year. So these are programs that sponsor travel, where you can work as an intern or paid employee or volunteer. The important thing is gap year, again, it's not a year-long vacation. There's a lot of planning that goes into it. And essentially, it is a journey of discovery. It is a journey of maturity. It's an opportunity to explore professional options, but they are purposeful. And there is data coming out of gap year experiences that speak very compellingly to perceptions about skills development and how it has helped people focus and gain a sense of maturity. So as you are talking to your kids about what to do after high school, this can be an option. And I would certainly recommend finding a program that is perhaps based at a university. Universities do sponsor gap year programs, and there are educational components as well. And that not only helps in the journey of self-discovery, but also gets kids motivated to pursue higher education as it is delivered in a practical and friendly environment. Now, you may think as a parent, especially a parent of a teen or a tween, that you don't have a whole lot of influence and that peers are the #1 influence. But truth is, they do listen to you and they do care about what you think. You are, and this is verified by research, this is just not me opining on the subject, but parents are the #1 influence on choice of career and college. So you do swing a big bat. So remember, your kids will always be looking to you to see what you think. And you don't have to have all of the answers. You don't need to be a comprehensive career guide or college catalog. As long as you have the big picture, and as long as you're there to help direct traffic. So if there are questions that you can't answer, so for example, if you have a kid who is trying to make a decision between playing minor league hockey or a hockey scholarship, you don't have to have the answer, but you should be able to know where to direct them. And if you don't, we can help with that. We at the university can help with that. We can help you map out the resources. And it's all about planning. It is all about the metacognitive skills involved in planning. You should be able to lead the way and model using your own effective style, communicating effectively and discussing the impacts of growth mindset. You have kids who will go to visit a college campus, or they will take a program on a college campus, and they will come back absolutely energized. And they'll say, I want to go to that university. I want to be there. I can see myself there. And then they may look at admissions requirements and say, I can't do it, or I'm not what they are looking for. And it's really, you are there to provide support, to say, hey, it is okay if you wind up transferring. There are different pathways into a university. And again, the idea is that you cultivate a growth mindset, that this is something that can be done. Encouraging critical and flexible thinking. Again, that is not only important in making a decision about the future, but that is something that will last a lifetime in terms of post-secondary education or going into the professions. What winds up happening with a lot of teens and tweens is that things seem incredibly overwhelming. There's so much stuff out there and they just can't organize it and make sense of it. And when it becomes too overwhelming, we know what happens in terms of the neurochemistry of avoidance. It's just too much, and it wouldn't help no matter what I do. So the idea is to start at the end. So you can work with them to say, okay, where do you see yourself perhaps in terms of a career? What would you really like to do? And then map backwards from that. And sometimes going backwards from the future is easier than going forwards from the present into the future, because you can see all of the steps rather clearly. Self-advocacy and resilience, the idea that kids should be their greatest advocates. They should be confident and they should feel enthused and engaged. Smart decision-making as essential. So this, again, is not only part of selecting a college or selecting a forward pathway. What we do through UC San Diego is we are partnered with a group that helps with financial decision-making. And we have workshops in both English and Spanish that are available without charge that encourages good financial decision-making, things like taking out student loans. And we're going to talk in our next sessions about student loans and types of financial aid that are available, but also practical matters like getting a credit card when there are people on campus offering credit cards or bank accounts or car loans or things like that. Financial decision-making is incredibly important. And again, you really want to start very early in the process. This is where brains are most malleable. Again, courses and workshops are available to reinforce these skills. And through our college counseling program, we actually offer programming for parents who are interested. So, we have a workshop on NCAA and what does it mean, and when are you getting competing offers from different colleges? What do you do there? So if there are athletes who are thinking about the future, always listening. Be a good listener first and foremost. That is perhaps the most important. Being a cheerleader, even if you don't agree, it is important to be a cheerleader. Helping with goal chunking, breaking down goals, for kids who can barely see a year into the future, planning out the rest of their lives can seem like an awesome task. So the idea is that you can help them with breaking them down into manageable pieces. You've lived the life already, so you are in the best place to help them. Creating a clear roadmap. So not only what do the individual pieces of road look like, what does the pathway ahead look like? What does it look like as a whole? And transferring the motivation responsibility. No matter how hard you try, and I experienced this with my own parents who kept pushing me to the University of California and really trying to motivate me in all sorts of different ways. And wouldn't you like to be here and look at all that's available to you? And I just wasn't having it. There are some parents and caregivers who may feel they don't know enough about the opportunity but want to support. It's okay to transfer the motivation responsibility to others. For example, peers or counselors or relatives who kids can turn to for that. And then always tapping into the key motivators. And that goes all the way back to interests. It is very important as you think about a life after high school, again, to really make good, comprehensive decisions. That has to do with, well, what do you want from life? And where does education fit in? Does it fit in now? Does it fit in later? Is it necessary for what I want to do? And if it is, what do I know about what is needed for where I might want to go? Where is the road to get there? It's not enough to say, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to be, but really to delve more deeply into it. And from the graphics we showed earlier, that provides you with a way of doing so. When we talk about motivation, when we talked about inspiration earlier on, really understanding the value of post-secondary education and what type is most valuable. So are we going after majors that will get us good jobs rather than sort of bring us intrinsic joy? Are there ways to combine interests in a way that we know our kids will be financially secure as they push forward. And what are my interests in learning styles? And you may not think that this is important, perhaps, in a university, but there are some kids out there, including myself, who really have a difficult time learning in a lecture hall with 500 other kids. There are all sorts of distractions, and it does not appeal to my sort of learning style, which is kinesthetic, just sort of learning by doing. That doesn't give you the opportunity. So really thinking about not only what your interests are, but how you learn, how do you like to learn, is very important. And then if post-secondary education, if college and university feels like the right thing to do, are you ready to make the 4-year investment? And are there alternatives? And I'm not solely talking about 4 years of tuition. I am also talking about the time and the energy that it takes to get through school. Now, what I would like to do now, before we move on to sort of looking at the application process, and looking at those factors that might dissuade somebody from going into post-secondary education, I thought what we could do, with the help of Mr. Dominguez and Ms. Delgado, if possible, is to break out into smaller groups. And the question that I put to you is, we've studied motivation, and we've studied these factors that are involved in college and career decision-making. What are a few things that you can do right now? I'm not talking about grand gestures. I'm just talking about small things that you could do now within the next few weeks to begin the process with your children. It doesn't mean they have to be in high school. They don't have to be seniors. They could be middle school kids. If you have younger kids, it could also be them. But what are some of the things that you could do now to help them start thinking about that? So Mr. Dominguez, I will let you come back and sort us, if you please, and we can move from that point. I think we are back. Mr. Dominguez, are we back, or is it just me who's back? I see a lot of people.
We are all back.
Okay, we are all back. So I am curious to find out what was going on in the small group discussions. What are people talking about? Would anybody like to volunteer to share?
Sure, I can volunteer.
Oh. Please.
Well, I was expressing that I have been asking my kids since last week after last week presentation, start to see what he would like to be, and they don't know, right? Mm-hmm. Or in my case, my kid doesn't know yet, right? So I was just asking, if they have come across any kind of information that can help us as parents, of something that can explain to the kids what are the different careers out there right now, which I'm sure are different to when I, some of them are just different to when I went to school, right? And if there is any, so we talk about that, some personality test out there, or field trips to schools where other students talk to younger kids, about the careers and explain to them what is it. So that's what I got out of the group that I was.
Well, that is fantastic to hear. And as a matter of fact, we are developing workshops that cover the broad span of careers that can be presented to both parents and students, that sort of look at industry sectors for the different types of careers that are possible. And certainly things like technology are always interesting to kids. Things like multimedia, broadcast, how to use, for example, social media as a way to present documentary filmmaking. So there's a lot of interesting stuff. So do stay tuned for that, because that will be coming up. So, no matter what kind of ideas your kids might have, they may come up with something that you may think is outlandish, or there's not a career that has to do with that. You'd really be surprised. There are a wide variety of careers out there, and so no matter how wild the idea is, definitely support it. And we are here. I am here. You have my contact information. You can always reach out to me about certain careers. If you'd like to know more about healthcare or engineering, anything that we offer on the UC campus, I can tell you what kinds of jobs are there at the end. So thank you for that. Anybody else who would like to share what came out of your group? What were some of the thoughts? Any things that you can do in the very near future to kickstart things?
For the group that I was in, a lot of ladies had some good websites to go to and look up for different careers. So I jotted those down to kind of take a look and see what they had to offer.
Yeah, and that's absolutely great, because once you identify a career pathway, and even something like YouTube is a great place to look for different careers. And if you really want to get a good sense of what a day in the life looks like, and certainly at the university we have resources for that too. But I mean, even giving your kids a sense of what life is like on the job can go a very long way. I'm just going to pop into the chat. I'm going to say here what's going on. My daughter wants to be a realtor, and there is there's great opportunity, and oftentimes we think as realtors who are people that sell houses, but there's commercial real estate. We have a huge department of real estate on our campus, and we even look at purchasing properties abroad. So there, you may think of one thing, and there are opportunities all over the place. All over the place. Anybody else? I'm conscious of our time. I think we are coming on to. I want to be respectful of our time. Let's see, what do we got here? Can you please share websites of the information? Yes, if you have those, if you've jotted them down, please. Yes, Gina, hey, I'm going to post my contact information right now, so you can have it. Now, before we depart, before we break, I want to ask everybody, did anybody guess the campus? Okay. Now I see Ms. Delgado and Ms. Simmons nodding. I know you guessed it. Did anybody else guess the campus for a fabulous prize from UC San Diego? Did anybody guess? I'm going to go to the chat. I'm going to take a look. Okay. Did anybody guess? Mr. Dominguez, do you see anything in the chat where people guessed?
I have Harvard showing up as one of the places. I remember seeing another one, but I'm trying to scroll through it. But Harvard is the one that I saw.
Okay.
Ms. Simmons, did you see anybody else on here guessing?
Okay. All right. Harvard.
There's a UC Irvine on the chat.
There's a UC Irvine on the chat. Who guessed that?
René Loya.
Okay, I didn't write that, did I?
No, Mr. Loya. Mr. Loya, can you?
Mr. Loya, are you an alumni of? Are you an alumnus of UC Irvine? Okay, hold on. I think this may be Mr. Loya. Oh, no, you're not. That is an incredible guess. Yes, that is an architectural rendering of Science Hall, UC Irvine, from the early 1960s. That is wow, that is a very exact and amazing guess. So, Mr. Loya, if you will be kind enough to transmit your contact information.
Dr. Appel?
Yeah.
Yes.
There's somebody before that.
Yes, Lucia Napoles guessed it before Mr. Loya.
Right when we started the meeting, I'm actually.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, certainly don't want to deprive Mr. Loya or our other fantastic guesser. Could you tell me her name one more time, please?
Lucia Napoles.
Lucia, are you an anteater? Okay. Nah, that almost sounds like no. Oh, your friend went. Oh, wow. To recognize an architectural rendering from the 1960s by way of your friend is impressive. Both of you, if you could transmit your address information, we will be sure to send you a wonderful prize from UC San Diego. Now, I know our time is at a close, so I want to thank you all for joining us. In our next session, we are going to get into the nitty-gritty. We are going to get to look at things like applications and financial aid and things like that. We will continue our journey. So in closing, Mr. Dominguez, Ms. Delgado, Ms. Simmons, is there anything that you would like to say to our stellar Sweetwater scholars?
Yes, if they can continue to please, if you have any questions, continue to post them on our link that we have shared on the chat. We will review those. For anybody who is watching this afterwards on our recording, you can always go to that link that is posted on the chat, and we will also post it on our YouTube channel, so that if you have any questions, you can always ask those questions after the fact, and we'll try to answer as many as we can. Additionally, for those of you who may be watching the recording, we do have our parent engagement website where Parent University recordings are saved, and you can follow along if you miss any of these recordings.
All right, Ms. Delgado, did you have anything for our stellar scholars?
Well, I just want to thank everybody for being here and for being engaged and for putting this information and this knowledge that we are all sharing into work and with their children, and for joining us here every week. Thank you, Dr. Appel, for everything.
No, thank you all. And I have got to get more complicated pictures of institutions. Everybody is guessing. So, all right, everyone, until next Tuesday, I bid you a fond farewell. Thank you to everyone at Sweetwater Union High School District for making this possible, and we will see you next week.